The river is long, but I'm owning the shore. I'm more than I lost, and I'm finding much more, surviving the crocodiles, one morning at a time.
Welcome to episode 4, everyone. And I was supposed to release this episode yesterday, but I just really wasn't feeling up to it. Today seems a little better. This morning, I was highly triggered by a podcast in which Lupita Nyong'o was featuring.
Of women will develop uterine fibroids during their lifetime, but we don't often talk about what happens next. I sat down with Lupita Nyong'o for my podcast, The Dose, and when I asked her what surprised her most about fibroids, here's what she said.
I was surprised by how many women had been offered hysterectomies as a first course of action. That for me was stunning. I could not believe it. That women were partially or wholly losing their reproductive organs because of this non-cancerous tumor situation. I just could not believe it. And for me, that is, it's unacceptable.
Talking about uterine fibroids and making sure that there was money towards research of uterine fibroids, how prevalent uterine fibroids were, and how that hysterectomies had become the default choice or the default option that was given to women in terms of treatment, and how this was shocking to her. And I was really triggered because obviously I'm on the other side of this. And I think for me, there wasn't really a choice. I mean, I'd reach a point in the condition where there was just no turning back. And I could see for myself, literally, visual evidence from the scans that I'd done that it would have been impossible to reconstruct my womb. And they wanted to try reconstruct the uterus, but the chances of it being successful and just the quality of life after that just made it more clear to me that there was no other choice. So yeah, okay, let's get on with episode 4. And as you know from the short, that was a teaser to this episode. I want to talk about phase 2 of recovery. Some might like to call it the false fine. And as titled in this episode, there are 2 aspects that I wanted to talk about: the invisible healing of phase 2 and the loneliness of this phase of your recovery. Let me start with an analogy, a great analogy, or a metaphor rather, of what this is like, or to just give you a picture in your mind of what this is like. So if we say recovery is like a burning house or a house on fire, phase 1 is about putting out the flames. Everyone sees the smoke and rushes to help, and it's all hands on deck. And everyone can understand and see the necessity to be involved. Then phase 2 is the reconstruction. So the fire is out. The house looks okay from the street, but you can't live in it. You can't live in it because the wiring is still exposed and there's ash on the walls. It needs to be cleaned. It's not livable. And where you find yourself is people trying to convince you to move back in before it's safe. So phase 2 of recovery is about the false find trap. Okay? You're feeling better. Look, for me, this happened around week 2.5, actually week 2 and 3 days, where your strength is up, the pain is mostly gone, the stitches have fallen out, the wounds are healing. From the outside, you look the peak of health, but there's still so much going on following the surgery. So you're feeling better, but it's the most dangerous time of your recovery. Where you discharged from hospital, and actually even before the procedure, I was told categorically by my gynecologist and also the support, the medical support, that the minimum period for recovery is 6 weeks, and that I should not be caught in the false find trap. And actually gave me examples of women who were in a similar situation where after 2 weeks they were feeling great and attempted to do things beyond what their body should have been handling at the time, and found themselves back in hospital for surgery because they had torn something inside. So where you cannot see and where it still needs to heal. So one thing I struggled with during this false find period is people seeing me. They know the time frame and they realize that I should not be up and about. But me telling them, look, I'm okay, and trying to take on things that I shouldn't, and being extremely fatigued. That's one thing that was so frustrating to me, to feel fine, but extremely fatigued and being out of breath doing things that I could have done easily on a normal day. And realizing as my body was trying to give me these messages that I'm not ready yet. And obviously I'm way away from my recovery period as advised. So I had to keep reminding myself that I should not fall into this false find trap. And when I heard the stories, I was like, I'm not going to do that. I listened to instructions. But let me tell you, it's easy to fall into the trap because your body and your mind are not working together, and someone is scamming someone between the two of them. And you end up making decisions and doing things that you often regret in the evening when your body is in pain and you are overly tired. And this is now where it's important to understand the difference between internal versus external healing. So just because the surface is smooth doesn't mean the work is done. And it's hard. Remember, the time frame is looking holistically at the recovery. And obviously you don't know what's happening internally, and it's major surgery. And you can imagine how much needs to heal. So internally, this process is still going on, and your body is using all its resources and directing it towards the area that needs this healing. And that's hence the constant fatigue, and the body constantly yearning for fuel to do this work. But it doesn't mean there won't be any FOMO. The fear of missing out is real during recovery, and especially when you're off the pain meds and your senses are now heightened and you can hear and see the world clearer, and you get the sense from the stories that come into the house that the world is continuing without you, that you were once upon a time an important cog in the wheel that was turning out there, and now without you it continues to turn. So FOMO is real when you're recovering, and it's so hard to give anyone advice on how to navigate that frustration and how to be at peace watching the world move on or move while you are forced to stay still. I remember one morning I went with my dad and my puppy, my new addition to the family, Cocoa Bean. Cocoa Bean Potbelly the first, very cute little mongrel puppy. And I go to this market, farmer's market, most mornings, Saturday mornings, and I thought, well, I'm feeling fine. I have no pain. I seem fine. Let's go. If I can tell you, I could only walk half, maybe even less of the market. And I wanted to still see some of the stalls on the other side of the market. And Dad was like, we are not doing that today. You've seen enough. You're going home now to rest. And I was so grateful that there was someone who still had their senses about them with me, who didn't allow me to do something irresponsible, because when I got home, I was exhausted. I was so grateful for that moment of clarity. And I literally I had a nap. I think slept for 2 hours or something like that. I was just extremely exhausted. I had no idea how much that would take out of me, because I had done this so many times before, and I'd carried all our wares after a day at the market with no qualms and with no issues. So this was very difficult, but I was glad that Dad was there. So someone was there to keep an eye, to be the one with sense, and to hold me accountable. So I think it's hard to make these judgments when you're suffering from FOMO and your senses are all about you, but your body just can't. And your brain wants to be out there and wants to be stimulated. So I actually don't know how to overcome this. I'm just going to put it out there, and then maybe in the comments we can assist each other in terms of how you overcome this. But it's been very hard for me when I could drive again, because I was not allowed to drive for a week. And when I could drive again, the first thing I wanted to do was go to the grocery store. And even that trip was too much to ask. And this was week 2, exactly week 2. And I had to get someone to assist me in the grocery store to carry the heavy things, because I'm not allowed to carry anything heavier than a full kettle weight. So you can imagine, I can't lift up 6 liters of milk cartons. I can't lift up sugar, a packet of sugar or cake flour, anything. So I needed someone to assist me, and I didn't have that assistance. So I had to ask a security guard to carry the milk into the trolley for me. And it was embarrassing. I'm not even going to have to be vulnerable and request assistance because you thought you could do this because of FOMO. So it was hard. What I do now is I make my breakfast and go back to bed. It's hard to not know that to accept that the world out there is moving on. So every day, every morning is a new struggle for me to say, you're not ready yet. You're only on this time of your recovery, that kind of thing. So every morning I have to consciously remind myself that I'm still recovering, and that I need to give myself time, and that I am tired, and that I am still recovering, and that I need to be patient. So every single morning I have to remind myself and encourage myself. But it depends on the day how successful this will be. Then I think about how other people see this whole thing play out. What was really strange is the translation gap in terms of what people see and what you say and what is really going on. So it's very hard to explain to people the fatigue, especially to your loved ones who see me looking great and having this, what they think is energy, compared to when I was down and out immediately after surgery. So for them, they're like, oh, she looks great. So she can cook dinner and she can, do this or that. And it was so difficult to explain that I am very tired and I don't have the strength for this. But they see me trying to go to the shops, or they see me go to the morning market, and they think, but she says she's tired and she's recovering, but she's trying to do all these things. So that's also a difficult one. But one thing that I am adamant about is constantly telling my support system, especially my loved ones, especially mom and dad that I live with, that I am tired, or I can't do this, or I cannot lift that. I haven't passed the 4 weeks mark yet. And whether or not, remember, human beings are human beings. We have ebbs and flows of our moods and whatever we're going through at a particular time. So there might be an irritation here or there. There might be busy, which is really pushing my limits of patience. There might be something else going on at a particular moment, but I have to be consistent in communicating my needs to them, and they've been really good so far. And obviously, the frustration is there for me to have to wait to be assisted, or to have to realize that I can't do certain things. But be consistent, and don't lose your patience, so that you can get the assistance you need and you don't do anything stupid. Lastly, it's very interesting. I think it was episode 2 where I talked about your village, making sure that your village was in place, your support system to help you with recovery from your hysterectomy. And what happens, which is very interesting in phase 2 of recovery, is the loneliness that you feel in a crowded room. So it's interesting, when there's a crisis, everyone comes forward and, all hands are on deck and your village works perfectly fine. But when you start to look fine, even though you're not feeling fine, support starts to thin out once the emergency phase is over. So you start to feel lonely. People are checking in a little bit less because, you're getting on with it. But obviously, you're not back at it. You're not back at work. You're not doing anything major because you need to take it easy as you recover, even though your brain is peak functioning. So it's hard when people are thinking, okay, crisis is over. She doesn't need us as much, when you still do long for companionship and long for conversation. So phase 2 of recovery is a very interesting time and a very interesting experience. And I'm still navigating it. I'm still trying to figure out. Every morning there's a new patient struggle and a new FOMO struggle to overcome. And it's just about reaching that middle ground, understanding it, you're not quite sick, you're not quite whole. So this episode, I think, let's think about giving ourselves permission to keep resting and to kill the thoughts around falling behind. You're not falling behind. You're just honoring the internal work that no one else can see. So if you are in this falsifying phase, please tell me, how are you handling the urge to jump back into life too soon? What are some of your coping strategies that you've looked at, that you've engaged? And let's talk about it.